We're going to be starting with Carlo Ratti, and our CEO, Ignacio Mayol, will be giving him his introduction.
Hello all, and welcome to this 11 a.m. Panama time lecture. I'm very happy and very pleased, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce Carlo Ratti. Welcome, Carlo. Carlo Ratti is an architect and an engineer by training. Professor Carlo Ratti teaches at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he directs the Senseable City Lab, and it's a founding partner of the International Design and Innovation Office, Carlo Ratti Associati. He graduated from the Politecnico di Torino and also holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge. Right now, he's a leading voice in the debate of new technologies, impact on urban life and design, and Carlo has co-authored over 500 publications, including The City of Tomorrow by the Yale University Press. He's currently serving as a co-chair of the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on Cities and Urbanization. Welcome, Carlo. It's a pleasure for us to have you here.
Thank you. Very happy to be here with you. So I'll share my screen. Just a second. Just a moment. Yeah. I'll share my screen and start the presentation in just a second. All right, here we are. All right. Well, so I was asked to talk about mobility today, but before that, I want to share with you a little bit about what we do and what we're passionate about. So what you see here is actually a city from the satellite, and those 4 numbers are actually 4 key numbers about cities in general. You know, remember those numbers 250, 75, 80. Cities are only 2% of the surface of the planet. They are 50% of the population, 75% of energy consumption, 80% of CO2 emissions. So if we can do something to make our cities a little bit more sustainable, that can be a big deal globally. And what we can do today, well, we can actually look at this very interesting condition, which is the convergence of digital and physical. One way to see this is, you know, the internet is becoming Internet of Things. The internet is entering the space of the city, and again, is creating smart or sensible cities. If you look at production, is about Industry 4.0. If you look at home, is smart homes. If you look at cities, again, it's smart or sensible cities. And that's what we are looking at today. We're doing this with different operations. We're doing this with MIT Senseable City Lab, both in Boston and in Singapore. You know, that's the research part. We're doing this with design with Carlo Ratti Associati in New York, in Italy, in the UK, and also with some of the startups that came out of both over the past few years. But today we can look at a city like this, like a living organism. You know, that's a visualization. It was a MoMA, it's the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And it was done by Pedro Cruz from our lab at MIT. And here's a city like a living organism like we couldn't see just a few years ago. We can today thanks to big data. And big data can also reveal many other dimensions of the city. For instance, what you see here, you see every dot is a taxi pickup or drop-off. A yellow dot is a pickup, a blue dot is a drop-off. What you see here is actually JFK Airport in New York. If you zoom out, JFK was down in the lower part of the screen. You see Manhattan and all of the boroughs. And then we started asking some questions. For instance, you know, how many trips could be shared in Manhattan? And so if you look at those 2 points, you got, between those 2 points, you got over 200,000 trips in the course of the year. In some days, you have over 1,000 between those 2 points. And so potentially, a lot of those trips could be shared by different people. Now, when you got a lot of, when you got so much data, when you got big data, you cannot use traditional mathematics. In this case, you know, linear programming, the traditional approach failed simply because the data is so big. So we we develop a new approach that we call shareability networks. You see the networks here, visualized, and the analysis showed us something interesting, that in Manhattan, you could take everybody to destination with a small delay. You see the delay in the upper left graph, maximum delay, but with around 40% less vehicles than what we have today. And that's interesting as a finding, but not only that. So we published this a few years ago. That was before Uber launched Uber Pool. When the results were published, then Uber reached out. We started a collaboration between MIT and Uber. And as you all know now, Uber Pool does exactly that. Allows two people going more or less in the same direction to share a ride. And that becomes interesting because if two people share a ride, it means one less car on the road, which means less congestion, less energy consumption, and less pollution in our cities. Of course, all other things being equal. So that was a little story about how we can start from the physical city. We digitize it, we take the digital data, we use intelligence to process digital data, and then that can help us to design better the city. In this case, to rethink parts of the mobility system. And by the way, also in this paper, even if this is a paper with a lot of mathematics, I would consider this a design paper, because it asks questions about how we can transform the city of New York from the point of view of mobility. With the same data, we've been working on some other questions. That's a more recent paper in Nature a couple of years ago, where it was featured also on the cover, and we ask ourselves another question with big data, which is, tomorrow with self-driving cars, what is the minimum number of vehicles you need in order to keep Manhattan on the move? And it turns out, again, that there's a lot of optimization we can do versus the situation today. But so far I showed you the car was a little dot. It's a dot moving in space and time. So it has X, Y coordinates and time, and the timestamp. But a car is much more than that. From a sensing point of view today, most cars have 2,000 or 3,000 sensors collecting information in real time from the environment. And that what you see here is actually real data collected from Volkswagen using their cars. And so you can start using a car as an ambient sensing platform, as you see here, or we can use the car as a system to sense the condition of infrastructure. And so I think, I want to tell you a little story. This is a bridge next to MIT. This bridge was working okay. And then a few years ago, they did an inspection. They monitored how it was vibrating, and then they realized it was about to collapse. So the bridge had to be basically rebuilt at a very high cost for society, both a monetary cost, a few $100 million, and then both at a kind of cost for the city that was divided into two parts, Cambridge on one side, Boston on the other side, for a number of years. And the reason that happened is that, it hadn't been monitored, because monitoring a bridge can be quite expensive. You put sensors such as the one you see to the left, or you send people, as you see to the right, but that can cost you $500,000 a year per bridge. So it's super expensive. But what you're getting with those sensors is really vibrations. And so we started asking ourselves, what if we could get the same data from other type of devices, same vibration data from other type of devices, such as the car, as I mentioned before. There's accelerometers and there's gyroscopes into the car. There's the same sensors are also in our phones. So, we started thinking, can we collect data just from the car and from the phone in order to better understand the urban infrastructure, or in general, the state infrastructure? And we started from a very famous urban bridge, that's a Golden Gate Bridge. The reason is that, we know everything about the Golden Gate. It has been studied for decades, so we know it very, very well. So we got very good ground truth, as people say in research. And so we started going back and forth across the Golden Gate. You see it here, over 100 times. After 100 times, actually, the San Francisco police stopped us. They got a little bit suspicious about what we were doing. But you see, we collected anyway all the data that you see here in its raw form. But then by analyzing, we can actually get the key frequencies of the bridge through the data. So again, that becomes very interesting. It means that tomorrow we don't need to put sensors on every bridge. We can just use data from our phones and then, analyze the data, and in one go, get information about all of the country. And as a matter of fact, we're now expanding the project with a lot of data from Uber, or in the Uber in the United States, and in Europe from Allianz, the insurance company, in order to see how infrastructure behaves, and where there's the risk of possible collapse. Now, other projects, if you add additional sensors to the car, like 2 little ears, the car sees the city like this, in 3D, that's a LiDAR sensor, and then you feed it into an artificial intelligence system and the car drives itself. And that's not the distant future, that's actually the present. As we speak, there's thousands of self-driving cars being tested. True, we're not at level 5 yet, which means you're in the center of Panama and you can press a button and get to New York with your car autonomously. We're not there yet, but still, we are getting close and better. So as you know, there's a lot of different ways to reach autonomy. Level 5 is the most autonomous, the most independent way, the top level where the car can do everything on its own. But we're interested about the consequences on the city. So for instance, the city is full of cars today, and the cars are parked 95% of the time. That's why we got images such as this one. But if you go to self-driving, you need much less space for cars. We've been monitoring this and simulating that in Singapore, where with our lab in Singapore. So in Singapore, you've got 1.37 million parking spots. And if you move to a self-driving paradigm where the car doesn't need to be parked all the time, the car can, keep being on the move, give a lift to you and then somebody else in your family or anybody else in the city, potentially we could cut it down by 70 or 80%. So potentially we can reclaim a lot of place in our cities. We called it the minimum parking problem. You find it in a paper, scientific paper by Nature, Scientific Reports, just a few months ago. Or you can look at the traffic lights. Traffic lights arrived on our roads when cars arrived on our roads. But if you've got an intelligent system where every car knows where it is and where all the other cars are, you don't need to stop anymore. You can keep on going, just avoiding collisions, like you see here. Now, don't try it yet. But anyway, so this is the research we're doing at MIT. I want to show you how this can be translated into design in different ways. And then at the end, I want to share with you a little bit about startups. So this is a project we've been doing with our design office with Google in Toronto. And the idea is, if you got self-driving cars, as you see here, these are the self-driving cars by Waymo. Waymo is Google's sister company dealing with autonomous driving. And if you go self-driving cars, you can think about a road that in the morning looks like this. When it's rush hour, then a few hours later, it can look like this for kids to play. And then in the evening can be a place where you have a block party. So again, how we can reconfigure the road with a little robot, a little bit like Roomba. And here you can see these kind of prototypes being tested by Google. So that's a Google space with a test of the first prototype of the self configuring road. We also did something similar for this project. This project is a project in Paris. We were selected for a competition called Reinventing, Reinventer le périphérique, so reinventing the ring road in Paris. And so one of the ideas, can the ring road in the future, in a few decades, can it become a place that again can be reconfigured? As you see here, could it become a place where, again, lanes are assigned dynamically. You can decide how many left and right based on rush hour. Today you can do it, but it requires moving a lot of infrastructure. Here it becomes like a seamless way to do it. We also looked at how the road can become an infrastructure to get energy from the sun, as you see here. So basically, you use the road both for moving, but also for getting the energy that's used in mobility. Or you can use also the road, a bridge above it. So that's, with EVs and AVs, EVs, electric vehicles, AVs, autonomous vehicles, it means that the vehicle becomes more silent, so less noise pollution. Certainly with electric vehicles, much less air pollution as well. And hopefully with AVs, with autonomous vehicles, also safer mobility. And so when you look at all that together, we can think about how we can rebuild part of the city above the peripheric, above this kind of ring road in Paris. So again, as a consequence on the city, we're more interested in the consequences on the city than on the technology. Now, it also, another project is a project under construction in Singapore, is one of the tallest towers in Singapore. It's a competition that we won together with Big, together for Capital Land. And here it's basically like, there's a number of things I could tell you about the architecture. If you want, we can go through them later. You know, there's a big tropical forest in the middle that becomes a public plaza between the top of the building and the lower part. But the most interesting thing is that the whole tower has been studied in a very flexible way for new ways of working, of course, but also for new ways of new mobility ways. And so what you see here is all the parking spaces. Well, we did them with a floor to ceiling height that's a bit higher than what you have normally in buildings. We also, with Arup as engineers, did the structure in a more flexible way. We put all the ramps outside, and the combination between all of this gives you a space that you can use as parking today, but in a few years, when we might need less parking spaces, those same square meters can be used for other activities, like offices overlooking Marina Bay, or like, here you see more like a Fab Lab type of usage, or other type of activities. So again, I think that's a very important thing, because what we design today in our cities will last for 50, 100, or 200 years. But technology is changing very fast in 5, 10, or 20 years, so much faster scale. And so it's important that what we design today that will last for a long time is done in a way that it's done in a way that's future-proof. So that basically will be compatible with different futures and will be adaptable. Cities have been incredibly adaptable over the centuries. Think about, we still live in Roman cities in some parts of the world, in Split, Croatia, in Rome, in Italy. And so we've been able to reuse buildings and the infrastructure we've built. But today that the pace of technological development seems to be accelerating, then we want to try to build that flexibility in what we design from the get-go, from the very beginning. And in the last 2 remaining minutes I won't tell you, because I just added this when I was hearing about what you were saying about startups and so on. It is very true. At MIT, we have, most of the people graduating in architecture today actually go through a program called Design X, and are involved in one way or another with startups. But Design X is really like an incubator at MIT for people coming from design. And by design, we have people coming from urban studies and planning, architecture, media lab, ACT, so art and theory. So all of them together in the School of Architecture and Planning. A lot of them, as I said, go through this program, but many of them in general are involved with startups. And so we are kind of no exception. A few years ago, we started taking some of the ideas we've been developing both in the office and the lab, and turn them into companies. So this is actually the first company we created. Company initially started to manufacture what you see here, called the Copenhagen wheel. Copenhagen wheel is a bicycle wheel that turns every bike into an e-bike. So we raise funds, venture capital funds, and started producing the wheel. But then, micromobility started. Micromobility is all these kind of scooters and bikes that you find in cities all over the world now. And so we entered the space of micromobility. We had actually developed a lot of patents in order to make micromobility more effective through artificial intelligence. So what we can do is do remote maintenance and remote monitoring, and remotely really take care of a lot of the things that you need to do to a scooter. And so just in the past few years, the company has been growing very, very fast. This was in the Wall Street Journal just a few weeks ago about our latest $60 million funding boost for a New York push, but also for a push in many other cities. And so that was for us a little story. That was the first company. We got now 3 in the US and 3 in Europe. But again, as a way to look at the same dimension of the city, but from the lens of products, not projects. Again, as I said, MIT, we do research. In the lab, in the office, we do projects. With the startups, we work on the product side. And I mean, I added this because I was particularly proud when actually Link, which is now expanding globally, came to Rome and a few cities in Italy just a few weeks ago. So I like the idea that, that what we started there also came to my home country. Now, I was told to keep it to 20 minutes, which is exactly now. So I'll stop here. These are our social channels in case you want to, let's keep in touch through that. But other than that, I really look forward to the conversation we are going to have all together.
Thank you very much. And now I feel that 20 minutes is that we will be happy to have you for more than 20 minutes. Let me ask you some questions, and let's take some questions also from the public. For sure that you from directly from your office or from the other platforms that you've been working, you have identified that the situations that we're living right now, or problems that the, let's say, urban infrastructures have, are like are multidimensional problems, no? And that's why I imagine all the answers are also multidimensional, at a multidimensional level answers. But there's something that keeps on in my mind, is that there's a lot of ways of how we use space that we're used to work for something specific, like just, let's say, a parking area or a road, and let's take that space and use it for other uses. But how really, now that we have all these possibilities, is going to start changing the way we design for the future? So not about spaces that already exist, but the new ones that we're going to be creating, because at the end, for the last, I don't know, 120 years, we've been building almost the same typology of buildings, no, with the same type of technique.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question. It's a question about urban innovation, and let me share with you a few thoughts. And by the way, because you say, I'm very happy to use also more slides as I answer some of the questions, and actually I'll do so. I will share with you a few additional slides.
If you have, we will be happy.
I like to do it this way, so that basically while answering the questions, I can share additional slides, even if they're taken from other presentations. I'll open them as we speak. But I wanted first to comment, which is it's really about the pace of urban innovation, how we can really speed up design. And the way I see design is really as a more as a, in a way that's similar to what happens with natural evolution. Or what natural evolution, what nature does, is try many different options, many different design, and then one of those options will succeed. That option will replicate and become a winning option. And the world of the artificial is not that different. Think about the iPhone. The iPhone came as a mutation in the world of cell phones, and then the iPhone was the first smartphone, and then had a huge impact, because without that, we would not have been able to really to do anything from. By the way, I'm speaking a bit slowly because I'm also opening these kind of additional slides. But we're not have been able to do any in additional things, such as Uber or all the other applications that need a smartphone in order to work. So again, I like to see this kind of analogy between the two, between natural evolution and the evolution of the artificial world. And I think so what we need to do as designers is try many things and try them and see how people respond. And that's one way to speed up evolution. And actually we are doing that and writing about that as part of something that, it's still, it hasn't been announced publicly yet, but I think I can probably share it with you as we are among friends. I've been asked to curate Manifesta. Manifesta is this architecture and art biennale that happens all over the world. And before Manifesta, there's always like an urban study. The last two were done by Remkulas and then by MVRDV as architects. The Remkulas in Palermo and MVRDV in Marseille. And so I've been asked to do that for the next Manifesta next year. And what we're trying to do is really try to transform a city in this way by trying quick, tactical transformations and then see what works, what doesn't work, what people like, and turn temporary things into permanent ones. And if you want, there's an analogy, for instance, in the world of fashion, which is the huge success that happened with Sarah,
Yes.
with the fashion company. So as you might know, what Sarah did was very quick, was very simple, was basically do a faster supply chain, be able to produce faster. And then what they do, they produce more options, they throw them into the stores, they see what is selling, and then they will ramp up production for what is selling well. And so another way to call it, sometimes in marketing, is called A/B testing. A/B test, you test option A, option B, and you see which one works better. So somehow, as architects, I think we need to learn a lot from that, and really try to do more of this, which is very similar to what happens again with natural evolution. Meanwhile, I'll just show you a few more slides about this and about the way we can. I'm sorry, I've been. I should open. I didn't expect this question, so I need to find the right side. Well, why don't you go
Don't
to the
worry,
next?
don't worry.
Why do I don't go to the next question? While
Yeah,
I'm finding,
I will go to the next question.
While I'm finding the slides.
I have a question from the public that says that, how do you think technology and human-centered design converge? Talking about the urban field, how can we reach a balance between them?
Well, I think that's an very interesting point. And actually here I will share with you some other slides. I didn't find the slide I wanted to show you about the previous question. I'll do it hopefully later. But I want to share with you some other slides here, which are a bit related about, the natural and the artificial. So we all know, we're all familiar with the idea of cyborg. This, by the way, is a cyber manifesto by Donna Haraway, has been one of the foundational texts related to cyber culture. And cyber means, going from the natural world, in this case from the human world, and hybridizing with the artificial. And again, by definition of natural and artificial, I would use what is given by Herbert Simon in a great book called The Sciences of the Artificial. But so we're quite familiar with this. This has been an old, dream of humans, to basically augment humans with technology. But today we can do the other way around. I saw this picture before about digital and physical. This is helping us to go not from the natural to the artificial, but from the artificial to the natural. And so what I like to imagine is a kind of co-evolution. To go back to your question, a co-evolution that will go from natural to artificial to natural, brings to a convergence. I think that a lot of the tragedies and the big global issues we are facing today, from climate change to segregation in cities to pollution and so on, are really because we looked at natural and artificial as two separate universes. While if we start thinking about them as something that converges, then I think we can really start to tackle a lot of the problems of the Anthropocene. And so some of the projects I showed you before also showed this. When you use data, as I showed in the first project, data can help you see a city like a living organism. I'll show you perhaps a couple of other things. For instance, here I'll share again the screen. This is a project we did at Milan Design Week. Milan Design Week is an event in the world of design that happens every April in Milan. And here we did a garden where you had 4 seasons at the same time. So this was bringing nature into the city and controlling climate. So we would use photovoltaics on the roof to collect energy, and then the energy would be used in order to control the temperature of the different rooms, so that as you move through the rooms, you go from spring to summer to fall to winter. Winter with real snow, and again, you can see how we can do small climate change modification. Or in this project as well, we've been doing where we use mycelium, mushroom roots, in order to develop very simplified architecture. But the idea has been to grow it in 3 weeks from the soil and then compost it afterwards. So the idea is, how can we do an architecture tomorrow that's more similar to how a plant can grow. It can grow from the soil and go back to the soil. So, I mean, just some examples. And of course, technologies, artificial intelligence are other ways to hybridize. But these are just some examples of how we can hybridize the world of the natural and the artificial and start thinking about coevolution.
Impressive, impressive. We as Latin American countries face a very large challenge on how to implement big data technologies in our cities. Of course, when we see what you're doing right now in Singapore, and we try to see if in some Latin American countries there's doing something like that. I don't think right now no one's doing that approach. But from infrastructure to not only infrastructure, also to the part of the politics, no? How would you frame the proper approach for cities to progressively transform our way into managing big data?
Yeah, no, big data is a tough one because, there's different types of big data. You got some big data can be opened up. And, that was a big push that the Obama administration did 5-6 years ago before Trump. I was at the White House when for the launch of the report on smart cities. But, that was a big push in the second term of Obama to really make data much more accessible. And that is about data that you already have in a city or that you have in government and how you can open it up. So that's something that I think everybody should do. It's a no-brainer, and then will make data more democratic and help people develop new apps and understand better the city and research to advance. So that certainly should be done, and it's quite easy to do. But today, the problem we're facing is that a lot of data is, say, in the hands of big corporations. Think about, the Google, the Facebook, and so on. And and then, some of the data is so granular. It tells us so much about our lives that you cannot really share it. You certainly cannot make it public to everybody like open data. And so the question about open data, that's global, a question that's, it's not only about Latin America, the global South or the North, is really a global question. That's kind of the tough one, the tough part. Now, the good thing, however, is that if you manage to get some types of data, such as cell phone data, then even if you don't have a lot of government data, you can use it as a substitute. So again, here I'm saying that the fact that we have a unified infrastructure all over the planet for doing something such as making calls, for instance, is a good infrastructure as well to collect data that can be used in order to better understand our cities. Or, we can use apps, and the good thing here is, like I showed you before with the bridges, you can use apps, and those apps can help us all over the world, in the North, in the global South, and wherever we deploy them. So somehow, that's good because that has kind of an effect of democratization. But at the same time, we need to take care, be careful about the 2 dimensions I mentioned before. The data that's already public but not fully open, and that should be open as soon as possible, but also the fact that a lot of interesting data, unfortunately today, it cannot be shared publicly because it's so granular and has so much information about our lives. And here, as I said, I'm referring to the data from Facebook and similar. I also found what I want to show before related to your first question, a very initial question, and when we talked about design and looking at designing for the future. And I want to show you here a few images. Let me share the screen again. I want to show you a few images. Do you see them?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. A few images that were done exactly 120 years ago, so at the turn of the past century, so in 1899, 1900, where people imagine, a bunch of French artists imagine the world in the year 2000. You see what they say at the top? They say, Alain 2000, so in the year 2000, this was a busy farmer, so they got it right about mechanization in farming, in agriculture. They also saw something close to Roomba. This looks almost like a little Roomba cleaning your homes. So they got this right, but they also got a lot of things wrong. They thought, they basically would move in the oceans with whale buses, such as this one, or that actually the aviation police would move like this in our cities. And the point I'm making here is that, we cannot predict the future. This goes back to your first question. This is Karl Popper, the great philosopher. He said the future is open. It's not predetermined and thus cannot be predicted. except by accident. The possibilities that lie in the future are infinite. And so I would say that actually design is really the way to find those possibilities. So the future is not something to predict. The future is something for us to design. And that goes to the point I made before about Herbert Simon in the book I mentioned a moment ago, The Sciences of the Artificial, the fact that, he says natural sciences are concerned with how things are, but design, on the other hand, is concerned with how things ought to be. So design is really a way to turn the present into a future. We hopefully into a better future, but basically the present into the future through this transformation. And I think that's design at large. That includes, of course, architecture, planning, urban design, but also, different disciplines of engineering and so on. So all those disciplines that help us to transform the present into the future.
Very good. You know that taking into account what you're doing in Singapore and all the study that you have in your Senseable city platform of the parking space and how this could also create or reframe the parking space that already exists, it makes me think that there are a lot of things that we can transpolate, no? Like the situation, let's say climate in Singapore and Panama, or so let's say tropical countries, and then we built all parkings above the street level. So in Panama, because of the soil, we have find the rock very, very, very close and water to the underground. We build parkings above, and almost every building have, let's say, 5-story height of parking, no? And at the end, and at this moment, these parkings are completely empty, all day long empty. Only they are being used at, let's say, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Do you think that at this moment where we don't have enough data from specific places, these examples of things that are happening in other areas, they can be used as a experience and to guide a little bit of what we should be doing, no? I think that we have a lot of opportunities on the idea of taking areas that are subutilized right now and take an approach of how can we bring more life into it and not having only that as an empty space.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, there's, first of all, there's a lot of interesting thing. As you say, if you look at this framework I was saying of design as an evolutionary framework where we are trying things and then replicating, then certainly looking at what other cities are doing is the first step to get inspiration. There's also very interesting examples for parking. Is one day of the year a big initiative started in San Francisco. Now it happens all over the world, which is called Parking Day, where people take parking spots and turn them creatively into other things. And again, there's nothing better to see creative solutions that have a parallel system where many people around the world can try out different solutions. And so you see people having turned parking spaces into anything really, like from a living room to a garden to a farming pod to a place to have tea, to a tea room or tea house and so on. So somehow, but that is about, the more options we have there, the more we can look at them and see the ones that might work in one city or another one. And again, like mutations in natural systems, this can help us to select for better cities and better designs. So certainly this ability to look at other cities and see what they're doing and then test it. And I think the other thing I would suggest is, as I was saying before, trying to test things, something like, try to develop in one of these parking lots that are empty during half of the time, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Try to insert there something, to put activities there. It could be very cool, like the parking that was designed in Miami Beach by Herzog and de Meuron, that's being used also as a gallery and it's based for other activities. So, trying that and see if it works. And then if it works, just replicate it and change the city. So again, this evolutionary idea is usually the best way in order to transform our cities.
Something came into my mind is that let's say public transportation, it works by offer instead of by demand, no? Now, let's say selective transportation, it works by demand. So I take my phone and I get an Uber. what are the biggest challenge for the massive public transportation systems in cities that have a lot of density?
Yeah, well, I would say that also public transportation in the end works by demand, right? It works, it just is not real-time demand, but it is demand that has been aggregated, maybe calculated over a number of years. So the city, in order to plan a new bus route, they will look at demand over the previous, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then, look at the demand and design the bus lane, the bus line along, based on the demand for mass transportation. So I would say that both of them work demand, but you're right. Basically, if you look at Uber or similar systems, they work based on real-time demand, while a bus line works based on aggregated long-term demand in the city. And to me, there's still a lot of, going back to the second part of your question, to what are the solutions for dense urban areas, there's still a lot of things that we can do in order to make mass transit more competitive. For instance, again, I showed you before, Super Pedestrian is a startup operating with the brand Link globally now, and that's micromobility. So micromobility today is dockless bikes, is scooters, electric scooters, but I think tomorrow micromobility will be also small vehicles, one-seaters or so. And I think micromobility is very interesting. I was in Paris a few weeks ago, and the current mayor of Paris has not been too keen on vehicles. So today, Paris was a city with a lot of high throughput roads in the center. So you could, with a car in the 1960s and 70s, they transformed the city into a car-friendly city. So you had all this kind of boulevard, one-way boulevard with 3 lanes or even 4 lanes of traffic moving quickly through the city. Now, the present mayor changed all of this. So today is more difficult and takes longer to move by car in Paris. But I think what is amazing, the best way to travel today in Paris is really you take the metro, and then for the last mile, you use micromobility. And I did it myself just a couple of weeks ago when I was there. It's really the fastest way to move to the city. Take the metro, go from A to B, and then for the last mile, you jump on a scooter, electric scooter, you jump on an electric bike, and you do the last 5 minutes. And that's really super fast and great. So I would say that I think somehow mass transit has many advantages versus private transportation, because there's no other mean of transport is so that uses space in such a dense way. We're all packed next to each other in the metro or on a bus, and so that's very effective from the point of view. But then if you combine that with micromobility, then you have a perfect solution, because the traditional problem of public mass transportation is that you don't get exactly door to door, but with micromobility you get the last mile and the first mile solved, so you can get door to door very quickly.
Thank you very much. And as a last question, I would like for all the young people that are connected right now, if you can share, what do you think it's going to be the role of the architect in the next, I will say, 10 to 15 years, no? And how can younger generation can approach to participate in a more active way on the changes that we are experiencing in the world?
Yeah, with pleasure. And again, I will share some slides here to answer this. The slides refer to someone that probably many of you know, is a great Latin American architect. Just a moment. I'm getting there. And who's this guy? This guy is Luis Baragan, and as you know, Luis Baragan was a great architect that in the second half of the 20th century changed the course of architecture all over the world. And he was Mexican, but not everybody knows the whole story of Luis Baragan. So Luis Baragan was born in Guadalajara. He designed a few buildings in Guadalajara, a few homes. They're quite interesting, but nothing too spectacular. You can visit them still today. I just saw a couple of them from the outside. Then he moved to Mexico City, where he made a lot of money in designing a lot of buildings that were not that great at the time in Mexico City. I mean, he was just building quantity, big quantities in Mexico City during the boom era post-World War II in Mexico. And then at one point, he writes in his notebook, he writes the following. He says, "I'm sick of listening to clients talking about their tastes. I'm quitting with all my clients. From now on, I'm going to work for one client only, myself." He writes it. By the way, I had the Spanish version. I don't remember what it is exactly, but you know, but I read it once. That was my translation. But anyway, so he says this, and from that day, he stops working for this kind of big clients he was doing work for, and then the only thing he does is a handful buildings. You know, some of you might have seen him. It's his own home in Calle Ramirez in Mexico City. It's Casa Gilardi. It's a couple of homes in El Pedregal, a beautiful district with a lot of volcano lava on the ground in Mexico City, and a convent. And so he only does, you know, a handful buildings, but those buildings are so beautiful, you know, and they are able to rethink modernism at the time, to blend modernist tradition with Mexican tradition, with Latin American tradition in general, that those buildings win him the Pritzker Prize, one of the first Pritzker Prizes ever at the end of the past century. And so the question for you, I'm saying, you know, this is for the young people, as you say, for people who have just graduated. My message is a positive message, which is, you know, today you can do like Baragan. But the good thing is that thanks to the network, thanks to the internet, you don't need to wait until when you're 50, like Baragan, or over 50. He wrote this when he was 55, I believe, in his diary. So you don't need to wait all the time in order to be free, to buy out your freedom, to do whatever you want. You can actually do that, do it earlier, because the internet allows a different methodology. And let me share it with you and tell you what I mean with an example. So this is actually a project we did at the World Expo in Milan. The World Expo in Milan was 2015. We actually worked a lot with expos. We did a pavilion at the World Expo in Saragossa. We did 2 pavilions at the World Expo in Milan. 2015, we're working now on the Italian pavilion in Dubai, where we won the competition for the pavilion that will open in Dubai in a few months. But World Expo in Milan in 2015, the theme was Feeding the Planet. And one of the 2 pavilions, we were asked to do the pavilion of the future. And the head of the expo, who's now the mayor of Milan, asked us to try to design a future supermarket. Now, only problem is that, you know, they gave us a box. The box was given to us. It was, you know, pre-built and given to us as is. So then, you know, we had to decide what do we do on this box. And they were saying, well, you know, maybe you can do another facade, or maybe you can put LEDs on it or something. And we didn't like those ideas, so we decided to put a big plotter, and I'll go a bit fast. So we designed the world's largest plotter to turn that facade into a place where you can, like you see here, the robotic arm. A place
can you share the screen? You're not sharing screen right now.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Thanks for mentioning. Yeah, because I've been sharing and unsharing, so sorry about that. Here it is. Apologies. You should have told me before, but I showed also Baragan and all of that.
Yeah.
You didn't see it. So anyway, I'll go back to Baragan. So Baragan, okay. So Baragan you see here with his beautiful staircase, and then, you know, this is the sentence he writes in his diary. I'm sick of listening to clients talking about their taste. And then this is the image I was showing. So anyway, it was a big box. We didn't design the big box. We could do anything inside. And then the question was, what do you do outside? They wanted us to put a screen. We didn't like it. They wanted us to do a new facade. We didn't like it. So we said we turn it into a giant plotter. So plotting faces of people. So you see them here. And here you see the plotter, a robotic arm that can spray paint on the facade. So this became like kind of this giant canvas that you see here. I'll go a bit fast. So this became the world's largest plotter. And then in the same time, we had in our office, we had a small version of it called Scribit. That was a small plotter that would write on walls. And so everybody liked it coming to the office. People in New York or in Italy, people would see it. And, you know, some people would take a selfie and plotted there on the wall. So at one point, some of the people wanted to put it online on Kickstarter, and I wasn't sure. But we said, well, most Kickstarter campaigns, only raise less. I think 90% raise less than $10,000. So don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. For 99% raise, very little money. So we said, okay, we'll do it, but only if the campaign raises enough money. So we set a threshold that's usually very high for Kickstarter. It's 200,000. So if you get 200,000, we'll turn it into a product. If not, we'll just give it up. And so we did a video that I will not show you the full video, but here is anyway the video that was done for the campaign. I'm just skipping through it. I don't want to bore you too long. But then this became one of the biggest campaigns ever on Kickstarter, especially that year. I mean, this was not the end. I think it was 3 million in the end or something. And so that allowed us to start a company which is a Scribit and now is producing it and selling it. You see here, how it works. That's the factory and the different people working on that, and also artists such as Olafur Eliasson producing content I've been producing content for Scribit. So somehow, many other kind of original content for this. But the little story I wanted to share here, as you say, you said for young architects is, you can do what Baragan did, but in a different way. You can, start from the idea, forget the client, start from the idea first. And if it's a good idea, you go online, you share it online, you can do crowdfunding or, whatever. But the internet is a great platform to allow you to find people support your idea. So you start from the idea first and then get clients later. And you can do what Baragan did, but you don't need to wait until 50 or 55 before you have got the freedom. You can really get the freedom from the get-go, just thanks to new digital tools. So that will be my kind of little message of hope to everybody graduating today.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Before you leave, if you can share with us a little bit about Senseable City Lab in MIT and how it works. And I know that you already have one in MIT in Boston, but also you have one in Singapore. Well, at least that's what I understood from your presentation.
Yeah.
If you can share with us if also there's opportunities of expanding that into other regions.
Yeah, totally, and totally. And actually, we've been looking at, been thinking about, Senseable Latin America is, we are doing actually very interesting work in, for instance, at the moment in Rio de Janeiro, 3D scanning favelas. We've been working in the past with Medellin and many other cities, with Mexico City. So in the whole region, the way Senseable works, again, we are around, Senseable is around 50 people, mostly in Boston, a few people in Singapore. Singapore is part of an MIT initiative in Singapore it's called Create, which is a new campus that has universities from all over the world being together. And so we are next to people from Cambridge, ETH in Zurich, Yale, and other universities, Berkeley, and so on. And basically, we're passionate about cities, and we collaborate with industry. We collaborate with, of course, with governments, with cities. We got funding from anything from NSF, the National Science Foundation in the United States, all the way to small cities who want to work with us. And we try to develop innovative ideas there. And so that's really how we operate. The interesting thing about the lab is that the lab is really truly interdisciplinary, with people coming from all the way from planning, architecture, engineering, all the way to biology, to economics, to mathematics, to complex science, and really looking at problems at the city scale. So that's really our platform for research. And then I said before, there's research is one kind of the starting, the same vision that is kind of divided into three parts. Research on one hand, and then you get products when they become startups, or you get projects when they become a piece of architecture at the level of the building, the neighborhood, or similar. So that's how we operate. And by the way, all of you connected, if you're in Boston, when the pandemic is over, you're all invited in Boston, in New York, or in some of the places where we are, do come visit. It would be great to continue the conversation.
Thank you very much. And I hope also that we can find a way to collaborate in a city like Panama City. That for sure we can be a very, very good example to try to pursue some new stuff and find a way to try some new things.
With great pleasure. Actually, I've been to Panama only once, and one of the things, one of my dreams is to go back and visit the beautiful islands that you have with national park that you have, not far from Panama.
Yes.
And so anyway, I hope I'll be able to see you there at some point. But it was really great, and let's keep in touch for different type of collaborations.
For sure, Carlo. It was a pleasure, and thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.